Betsy Jordyn. I am here with Fraser, and we are having a conversation about his positioning, particularly around coaching versus mentoring as the starting point. Before we get started, though, would you mind introducing yourself and where you're at and what brought us to this conversation today?
Okay, so my name's Fraser. I set up my own business back in 2000. Zero investment, kitchen table startup, myself and my wife, and 18 years later we sold it to a PLC. So we've been through the whole startup growth sale process. I'm now using that experience to help other business owners, and I position myself as a business sounding board, which is sort of, I feel, halfway between business coach and business mentor, and there's lots of reasons why I do that, but I'm sure we'll get into that shortly.
So would you mind going back in time though a little bit, as you were saying that when people started asking you around how to get started or actually asking you for your advice on what you've done, if you could help them, what was your initial reaction to those requests?
Well, I'm one of those people who really enjoys talking about business to people. So, you meet somebody on a train or a plane, or you're sat by the swimming pool and they go, hey, what game are you in? And somebody might say, I don't know, I make pencils. And most people go, oh, that's a bit boring. Where I'd go, wow, that's fantastic. How do you do that? How do you get into it? How does that market work? All that sort of thing. So I've always enjoyed talking to people about their businesses. So after I sold my business, various people sort of just naturally started picking my brains and saying, particularly the sale process, what does the sale process look like? How did you feel? What were the ups and downs and all that sort of stuff? And that sort of organically has become what I'm trying to do now. And having done startup, growth, sale, I've done the whole gamut of running your own business and the highs and lows that come with all those. So what I found is most people's businesses, irrelevant to the sector, tend to have the same sort of issues. We use the phrase over here, same bucket, different shit. It's, that's pretty much it.
I have to remember that one. I don't know what it is about the British phrases that are way more fun than American ones. I'll have to remember that one. So, all right. So it sounds like you had the experience of doing your business, and then what was new for you is helping other people with their businesses. So that's more of the new world for you.
Yeah.
What gave you the confidence to say, all right, I know how to do this. I know how to advise people. Like, how did you get from here to there to say, you know what, I can really advise people? And now you're starting to see that people have the same issues, but how did you make that transition from, I do it myself, I help other people do it?
That's actually a difficult one, because when I came, after I'd sold my business, a friend of mine, he's now a friend, but he'd advised me, said, oh, you should be a business mentor. And those of us who've run their own businesses, a lot of us suffer from imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. That case of, and mine was quite strong, particularly because my business started as an accident. It was a long story, but it started as an accident. So we said, oh, all right, this looks like this might work as a business. Let's see how it goes. And it sort of carried on and carried on and carried on. And during that period, you do tend to get the feeling of, shit, somebody's going to find out we're just making this up. And my defense for that is I do a lot of learning and a lot of reading and a lot of listening, all that sort of stuff. So when I sold my business and somebody said, oh, you should be a mentor, my first reaction was, shit, who am I to tell people what to do? I was just making it up and I didn't get found out. But then talking to people and people coming to me and saying, oh, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Again, sort of imposter syndrome was, I'd help people and talk them, it happened like this with us, this might help you. People going, wait, say, Phil, that was really helpful. And again, the imposter syndrome sort of kicks in and go, oh, shit, they even believe me now. I think it seems to have helped them. So that's sort of been the journey. And the way I came across you was actually, was almost that imposter syndrome. Was like, shit, I better learn how to do this coaching malarkey properly. I'll try and find somebody who does know what they're talking about. And hey, Betsy Jordyn turned up.
That is so funny. This coach, all right, I love the malarkey. I have to keep that one in my lexicon as well.
Sorry.
But what I think is so funny is that your expertise sounds like is that you figure stuff out and you developed expertise, but you were devaluing it because you were figuring it out. Like, how did I get to this place where I know how to grow businesses? Like, well, I made 1,000 mistakes and yay me, everybody gets to benefit from those. And that's where the unconscious confidence comes in, is that
Yep.
you must still do that as you continue on and even learning this business. You're going to continue to learn that. That is your superpower, is your insatiable, your curiosity. People say, I make pencils, and you're like, wow, that's interesting. That's your superpower. Like, yeah, I'll get in there and I'll figure it out. That's a superpower in itself.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that have happened since I sold that sort of stick out. One is a very, very old friend of mine I met for a drink, and he was, asking me all about the sale. I mean, he wasn't asking for advice. We were just talking over a beer. And I sort of went through the sale process and lawyers and NDAs and all that sort of stuff. And his reaction was, "Wow, how did you learn all that?" And often when you have knowledge, your immediate response sometimes is, "Well, everybody knows that, don't they?"
Yeah.
And you don't realize you've picked it up along the way. And then the second thing that again hit home was, people always talk about targeting and who's your perfect audience and creating avatars and all this sort of stuff. So I sort of fell into the rabbit hole of all of that and said, okay, this is, and drew what I thought was my perfect client. So I targeted them by industry sector, and my business was online, and my background was advertising and marketing, so that was that. And it was the size of my business, and we got it to a turnover of about £2 million. So it wasn't huge. So I thought, okay, we'll call it 3 million tops, because I feel comfortable in that, and I haven't got any bigger than that. My first paid for client, which came through recommendation, and again, this is something you talk about, is speak to your old network first, was somebody in a sector I've never worked in, multi-locational, which I never had. I had one office, and a turnover sort of twice as big as my biggest I ever got. So immediately, that was almost was a wow factor as well, because it was like, hey, I can do this for a bigger company, and it doesn't have to be in a sector that I know. And actually, and I'm still, as I say, I've only been doing this about a year or so I'm still learning. And actually, it's helping me develop that avatar. Actually, it's the nature of the person that becomes the client. And my ideal client avatar now is somebody who is looking to grow their business. Sort of full stop. And people and the first response to that is often, well, surely everybody wants to grow their business. And actually, there are people who don't. There are lots and lots of people who get their business to a certain size and go, fine, I'm happy here. So it becomes self-selecting.
But those businesses aren't going to last. So
I'll tell you. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I'll tell you a very quick story. I invested in a business a few years ago. It was a friend of my sister's, and she said, "Oh, speak to my brother; he'll help you." Invested with a couple of other friends, and sort of left it, and he got on with it. And then when I sold the business and started doing this business mentoring, I thought, well, first point I should start at is this investment. So did some work with the owner. Did that classic, sat down with the team, did a sort of a 360 with the team. They all told me what was right, what was wrong, and pointed the finger at him, and he pointed the finger at them. And so we put a whole strategy together, everybody bought into, delivered it, did, very nice presentation, all that sort of stuff, song and a dance. He's not touched it, because he's quite happy where the business is. It's profitable, it's not pulling up any trees, it's not growing, it's ticking along very, very nicely. And that is the counter to my point of the people who come to me and probably come to you and lots of other coaches are people who want to develop and want to improve, and that becomes self-selecting, I think.
In the magical ideal world, so here's my experience around that is there's people who everybody wants to grow. Not everybody's willing to pay the price to grow. So I have many clients who come to me, big corporate clients spend tons of money. When I was a consultant, spend a ton of money on growth strategies. But when they recognize like what it will cost them to change, and a lot of it, the cost is not about financial. It's just, I have to change my identity. If I was an entrepreneur of a startup and now I'm a top executive of a large growing company, it's a shift of identity. And so usually they eject out at some point because you have to change your identity, in order to be a different kind of person. That's when people hit the resistance. Everybody wants to grow. Not everybody's willing to pay the price of growth. That's where sometimes it's different. I want to comment on a couple things that you're saying, and then we can get into the difference between the mentor, consultant, coach, or what have you. And there's a difference when you advise on process versus content. And when you're advising people on content, on the content of what they're doing. So if you're in advertising and you're talking to someone who's in advertising, you're probably being more of that mentor to them because you're in the same line of business. So you just have more experience than they do. So they're probably a younger version of you. When you advise around process, well, then you're bringing a complementary expertise. Then you're bringing process. So then that's where to comply to anywhere. So you could work in any industry, but it is important to go a little bit more precise. Do you mind if I give like unsolicited advice around the avatar?
Absolutely.
People who want to grow have different reasons for wanting to grow. So you could look at it from a couple different angles. You can look at it from the company size. So a company that's growing from startup to growing is really different than a company going from revitalizing and staying in revitalizing, or going from growing to maturing. You have different issues and different challenges, because a startup to growing is, well, they went from the spaghetti against the wall kind of syndrome and say, all right, now how do I take this one piece of spaghetti and make a business out of it? So how do I set myself up for sustainable and scalable profits? So they're worrying about the systems and, the systems for growth. But if they've already accomplished that, they have a different objective. Once they've got that going, like, well, now I'm good. I want to be number one in my industry. Now I'm ready for that. It's the same thing in the consulting and coaches, the people that I support. When they start off, they just want to, like, I just need to get clients. Like, I got to get something going. Eventually they want stability. Once they get stability, then they want to become like the sought after expert and the thought leader. So there's a progression. So if I were going to give you any tips, I would just say, like, refine it down a little bit, and refine it down to your industry or your industry type that you love. Like, you can do work with everybody, but you don't love everybody equally. When I was consulting, I didn't get really refined, and it was a big mistake for me because I come out of this Disney background. I love hospitality. I grew up in retail. My parents had shoe stores all around Chicago. So I grew up in this retail, customer rich environment. But then I go and work for these manufacturing companies, and I have to like walk the floor, and I'm like, oh, kill me now. Like, I don't want to, like, I have to feign interest in, like, oh my God, you made that, versus, getting sent to resorts, all around the world or something like that. So you kind of picture, like, that's my walk the floor test. If the client, when they want, because they get super excited about introducing you to all the things that they do, if you can be equally as excited, because it's a difference, like, are you equally excited about pencils, or versus like, a technology thing, or, retail, like whatever would make you excited, just get a little bit more precise around that. And also thinking through, like, the person within the organization, who's the most likely buyer. You're going to work with everybody, but some of them, like, if you come out of an advertising background, chances are somebody in the marketing world, marketing sales, somebody with a customer facing kind of relationship are probably a natural fit for you somewhere in your angle in there. So that unsolicited advice, take it or leave it. That's not the point of this conversation, but I can't help myself. So sorry.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I was talking to my brother-in-law last week, and he owns a manufacturing company, and he was talking about machinery, and I was like, oh my God.
Right.
I totally get your, like, what, and in I was marketing and advertising, and you get printers, and they show you these machines, and this is an FK27, and you go, wow, and all I'm bothered about is, does the magazine that comes out the other side, is it look all right?
Yeah, right.
Machine and all that stuff.
To be like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I love what you're doing. But on the other hand, I have other clients, like my client Dave. He loves that stuff. So he grew up in a very different environment. So he grew up with his dad, like making engineering products in his garage. So, and he's an engineer, like he loves that stuff. So when he pictures walking the floor, like he's like, oh really? You can, you're going to go see that, and he would get super excited about it. So it's looking at the fit. One of the
Yeah.
things that I learned at Disney is when you're looking at clients, you're looking for three things. If a client's right for you, it's relevance, timeliness, and fit. So relevance is my expertise relevant for the situation? The timeliness is all around, is this the right time, and will they make the time to do the right work? So that's what you're talking about with clients who are dead serious about change. Sometimes it's just a timing issue. Like, yeah, they're serious, but they're not ready. Like that, there's a readiness factor. And then the fit is, do we mesh with each other? Like, does my values, does my personality, does my interest, like, do we align with one another? And that's sort of like that X factor, because work becomes a whole lot more fun. So when you get into your avatar, I call it archetype, and it's looking a little bit more around, like, how does this personality roll? Like, I have a model in one of my programs that I teach that looks at the four different archetypal families. They're from the work standpoint. So you've got the visionaries, you've got the sages, you've got the caretakers, and you've got the warriors. You're working with everybody when you work with the organization, but some of these personalities are your home base. Like, they love you. Like when I did work at Disney, sages love me. People who like step by step, and they like that. And so I'm sort of the visionary to the sage. They love me. The warriors, they like me, like they like my personality, but they don't love everything I talk about, because I make them slow down and I annoy them. One of my clients at Disney used to always say, like, oh, I love you, Betsy, but that strategy stuff you're making us do, it's like, oh my God. So, but she loves me as a human, but she would probably not, I wouldn't be her cup of tea if she was going to hire me. She should go for somebody else who's more technical, and that's why it's beautiful, is that there's room for all of us at the table, all the consultants and coaches, there's room for all of us. So unsolicited advice, but that's not what you asked me about. So let's talk about what you wanted to know about, because you originally reached out because you wanted my feedback. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll take a look at what you had asked me about. You wanted my feedback on this. So tell me a little bit more about the backstory on your article around the difference between a business mentor and a business coach. What was the purpose of this document, and how we'd want to, and what questions you have? And would it be better to look at it from the table or from the narrative?
I think it's more of a general thing rather than the specifics. Let me give you the background to it. And there's probably maybe 2 or 3 reasons behind this. The first one was my business was an online business, and one of our big strategies was always SEO, and we drove a lot of traffic through that. So again, my natural position is, okay, I'm creating a new business, which is me. I default to, okay, well, one of the strategies you're going to need is SEO. And the question, what's the difference between a business coach and a business mentor, is an enormous traffic question. And that's the first thing. So if we park that, and sort of part
can I ask a clarifying question on that one?
Yep.
Is it a big traffic question for your ideal? Do you have validation that it's the big traffic question for your ideal clients, or is it just you got the intel that this is a big traffic question in general?
I've done this very top level, so it's a big question just because it's a big volume question. However, and there's a couple of sort of subsets to this, and they come from different angles. One is that sort of positioning as people use the phrase thought leader. I don't like it, but as a thought leader, as somebody who is knowledgeable about this type of thing, and almost that positioning of giving stuff away free and helping people and supporting people and giving them the answers, that then they come to you because you're the one who knows about this sort of stuff. So on one level, it's SEO fodder. Slightly under that as a level is actually, it could possibly be a traffic driver. But the third thing was actually driven initially by me determining, what am I? And I'm still asking this question. Am I a coach? Am I a mentor? And part of the reason, and I've sort of slightly ducked out of this by purely calling myself a business sounding board, which sort of is partly mentor, partly coach, and I suspect partly is my imposter syndrome coming out again and sort of ducking out of holding my hand up and saying, I'm a coach, I can help you, or I'm a mentor, I can help you. And you know, my imposter syndrome said, well, tell you what, don't put your head above the parapet too much and just call yourself a sounding board. So that was all the reasoning behind all of this.
So can I ask you a question? Or
Yep.
actually, can I get blanket permission to just like probe all over and just ask
whatever you want,
Okay.
fire away.
So
Pick
when
me
you think
apart.
about, so you found my stuff. Does it matter to you if I call myself a mentor, a coach, a strategist? Like, do you care?
Well, this is probably the three things I've just talked about. Probably the answer I got is actually, and I think it says it right at the bottom of this document, or the this was the blue thing's supposed to be PDF, the rest of it's supposed to be a document. I think I got to the answer of, actually, it doesn't really matter. It's what they want from you. And actually, what my role is, or what I perceive my role to be, and probably your role, and lots of other coaches and lots of other mentors, is actually we're doing bits of both all the time. And yes, in answer to your question, probably it doesn't matter. The only issue is, the issue I've got is I'm obviously trying to sell myself or promote myself as sort of been there, done that, got the t-shirt, rather than just a coach who's read a coaching manual or somebody who's bought a coaching franchise. So I'm trying to differentiate myself with the experience I've got, which sort of, I suppose, falls into the mentoring pot, but probably what I'm doing is coaching.
I think that this is one of those things that I probably would say is that this doesn't matter. It's no offense. Let me give you a couple thoughts. Like, number one, around the business mentor versus business coach. My guess is the people who are asking this question are people like you and I, you know, who are in this field thinking I need to figure out this one, but not the ideal clients. So the thing that's interesting from an ideal client standpoint is we care very much about our methodology, and the word coach, like ICF has grabbed a hold of the word coach and has put a rigid box around what a coach is. You know, like somebody who asks questions and somebody who uses an inquiry method, and then business mentor, you know, has a different connotation. A consultant has a different connotation. A therapist has a different connotation, you know, and everything's in the rigid boxes. From a client standpoint, is they're more interested in the features and benefits of what you're going to be able to create for them. So if you were going to say, if we go to your website, you know, somewhere around like, what's a sounding board, I would rather just say services. And, you know, and so, because what we're making the assumption is, from a marketing standpoint, is we're making the assumption that the client has thought through their problem, they've identified the solution, and the solution is sounding board. What they haven't done on your homepage is you want to show more on this standpoint around, not even just you want to be a better business owner. I help turn startup companies into sustainably profitable companies. That's you want to lay more the value from here. And when you get to what is a business sounding board, maybe you can call business sounding board one of your services, but that's not all of it. You know, so what is, so right now what you're doing is you're pushing this, you're doing like the push on your methodology, and you're trying to label a methodology when you've got a whole host of stuff that you could offer. You have the been there, done that. I have the advice. You have process expertise that you could evaluate a business and you could evaluate what they need to do. That's a different kind of service. And you probably have other ones. It would be stronger from a positioning standpoint is to think through more. They care more about the features and benefits. So if you were going to talk about, you know, working with you, what are the features? Well, I've done it, you know, you have the start, you know, you have that been there, done that, and you have an ability to support them from a personal level and the tactical level. You know, that's a different feature and benefit, you know, like why would they want that is they want real world advice that will give them the personal support and the strategies to actually succeed and scale to that next level. You know, so if you're somebody who is able to take a business and sell it, that's the value proposition. That's what you're missing out on and saying here is, I could help you scale your business to get it to a point where you could actually sell it. You know, you help a business maybe create a separate entity from themselves, you know, rather than it's not attached to the particular owner. So when you get onto this kind of question, people, and you see this all the time, coaches do this all the time. What's the difference between a consultant or coach? Or what's the difference between a coach and a therapist? And I've never in my entire time of doing any of this mentoring business, I've never had anybody ask me to precisely define, are you a mentor? Are you a coach? I would rather look at these differences from an archetypal standpoint. You know, when I picture a mentor, you know, I picture like a hero's journey, you know, a hero's journey and a mentor, they kind of carry this office of a mentor. So the word mentor has to do with mind, you know, so a mentor is somebody who can help people kind of like hold out the vision for somebody, you know, until they can believe it for themselves. They could do that. A coach, you picture a coach as somebody, you know, like, come on, you can do it, you know, like an athletic coach. Like there's an office of it, but you could put that into different type of copy on your website. You don't need to do that on your you know, in a blog post. What would be more interesting, I pulled up a bunch of other stuff, this process on writing the post, which obviously you're an SEO guy, so you'll probably like this. I'm going to be speaking your lingo. You're going to be super excited. Instead of saying, I'm going to push this thing forward, we start off with clarifying, you know, what people are asking first. You know, like, so tell me a little bit more about who your ideal clients are. And what types of things are they bring? What's keeping them up at night?
Yeah. I think it's, I think one of the key things is how, and it's a phrase that I came across fairly recently, is, you know, what got us here won't get us there. It's that step. No, just as a statement, you know, we've got this far. I don't know how to get to the next stage. Now that next stage might be, you know, it might be from startup to taking on staff. It might be a few staff to taking on a management team. It might be going from a management team to, you know, 2 or 3 different locations. It's, you know, all those different step changes you go through in business. And I think that's where the issue is. How do I get, you know, I've reached £1 million, £1 million with it, or $1 million of turnover. How do I take it the next stage? You know, surmised in the you know, what got us here won't get us there. What, you know, what do I need to do to make that step change? And it might be, you know, I've got 3, and this is where the sounding board thing comes in. You know, I get clients who say, well, I've got, you know, 3 or 4 potential strategies. How do I evaluate which is the best one? Or I've got this big problem, you know, I can't see the wood for the trees. You know, I
kind of problem?
I can't see how, you know, it might be one problem, it might be a series of problems.
Give me an example of a problem that they would be worried about.
It might be a capacity issue. And you know,
what kind of capacity?
So it might be we can't grow sales. It might be we can't grow production, however much production might be. It might be profits going down. It might be we can't get profit up. We can't get turnover up. It might be a sales problem. It might be a marketing issue. It might be it might be a funding issue. It might be financial. And this is where I think the sounding board thing comes in. Is a lot of the time, and I found this already with clients. Is they probably know the answer. They just need somebody to sort of pull it out of their brains.
So, okay. So here's the thing. You don't want to sell sounding board services. You want to sell if you're going to write a blog, so right now in this conversation, we just learned from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We just brainstormed 9 different blog topics. That's what they're going to be looking for. You want to customize it for your, you know, for your audience. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to write articles around like, okay, here's my methodology, or here's my thing. You know, I'm a consultant, or I'm a coach, I'm a this, why you need to hire me, a sounding board. You can't see the forest from the trees. What you're doing is you're not meeting them at the starting point. So if you're going to be writing on your website, you're going to meet them where their starting point is and the questions that are actually keeping them up at night. You know, and so you want to set up your blogs to be an answer to a question that they're actually asking. And you could eventually get to the point around, like, let's just take, how do I hire my first staff? You know, so you might set it up with, actually, let me do my process.
I tell you what actually is probably a better question.
Okay.
Is how do I hire my first sort of number two, my sort of duplicate of me. You get to that point with the business where you've got one of everybody around you, then you think, right, okay, the only way we get bigger is when me as the owner sort of duplicates me as a number two. So it's all about delegation and responsibility and letting go and all that sort of thing.
So it's like, how do I hire my first COO or my first?
Yeah. I went through this. I went, and again, this sort of comes back to what we're talking about. I went through this process, and I remember being it actually worked out very well, but quite a long process and obviously a very, very important one, because this is the big step where you introduce a number two to the team, and they go, right, you're not answerable to me now, you're answerable to him instead. So you've got to get that bit right, but then I suppose the integration of that person is probably another one as well. You can be my copywriter, Betsy.
I will. So this is a more interesting question. So if you're going to do a Google search, we need to figure out the Google words, and we'll figure out the headline later, because we have to definitely sex up this headline. But if you were going to answer this, so from my standpoint with a blog, you always, and this is like my little process. We have a topic here. So right now in this one, we're answering, this is like my little spreadsheet around how to strategize your blog and your content. So we could say here is hire number two, like hire the duplication of you. So this feels like it's a how-to, or is a how-to or steps to, would you say, is the question you want to answer? Do you want to give them a step-by-step, or just kind of like 5 principles? Like, do you want to do a how-to or more of a steps to?
You could probably do it both ways. I mean, what I've found so far is people seem to resonate when I just sort of either do it on video or podcast or written. It's just, this is how I did it.
Okay, we could talk about how I did it, but let's get to the meat of the content. Now, after this, it would be beneficial to refine however we do this, is to come up with the actual keywords. So if I use the thing with the proposals, like on mine is, what's an example of a consulting proposal template? That might be a question that I might have had. Then I might look at the different phrases. I go on Answer the Public, so you already know this because you're an SEO guy. And then I might say, all right, I'm going to go for a template for consulting proposal. Then I choose my winning word. And then, then you can do all the SEO stuff. So all of this stuff. But when we get into the writing, what we want to do is, first we have the question, and now let's answer the question. Let's get to the meat of it. So if you're answering the question around how do you hire your first number two, duplicate yourself, what would you say are 3 to 5 main points that you can? How do you answer this question for them? Give me the answer. How do I hire my first?
Okay, so I think the first thing is clarify what their roles and responsibilities are, and in contrast to what your roles and responsibilities then become.
Okay. All right. What's number 2?
Set up the recruitment process.
Number 3.
What we did, and this word, I don't know, I picked this up somewhere, but I can't remember where I picked it up, because I felt I had to get on with this person first and foremost before anything else. I did a pre-interview, sort of meet for coffee, and sort of had a personal chat, which was fascinating, because actually people let their guard down, even though they know it's an interview. You get more of the person, and then second interview was then sort of CV, and then third interview was a presentation, how do you do the job? And then probably the next 2 stages would be integration into the business. So at the time, I had a team of 7 or 8 people who all reported into me, and then suddenly they're reporting into this other guy, and you can imagine, the use an English phrase here, who the fuck are you? And trying to say, right, speak to him, don't come knocking on my door, speak to him first, and then getting the team to be integrated, and also to get him onboarded and proving himself. Simple thing like maybe a 90-day plan. The team needs to, the team is sitting back going, go on then, give it your best shot, let's see what you're made of.
So somebody's going to go through these main points. So I'm a business owner. It's time for me to hire my number 2, and I need to know why I need to hire my number 2. And so I go through these 5 steps that you just suggested. I clarify the roles. I got my recruitment process. I did the pre-interview, the personal chat. I did the formal interview, and I did the onboarding. Where might I get stuck? What might be a challenge for me in implementing your suggestions here?
I think there are a number of potential pitfalls here. The first is the team not buying into it. And at the time, I had a number of quite long-serving staff. Different times, different people were a bit skeptical. So I think that's an issue. You know, one of the questions he asked me in the interview was, "Are you ready to let go?" So actually, one of the issues is you letting go and allowing, you know, this person to prove themselves. And obviously, as we all know, you know, part of the thing about proving yourself is making mistakes. So you've got to give them the space, make that sort of mistake, and, you know, and stand by them, and try and avoid that temptation to go, "Here, give it to me, I'll do it." That's internal. You do it external. You know, you're putting a new guy in front of clients and going, speak to him, not me. You know, the commercial, yeah, all right, if the team don't like him and you know internally have a bit of an issue, that's not, it's not brilliant, but it's not major. You put him in front of a client and he messes up with the client, then, you know, you have got an issue. So commercially, that's probably your biggest risk. But hopefully you reduce that by training them properly, giving them support, you know, onboarding, passing over information. I think also warming up clients as well, because, you know, as you grow as a business, you know, the majority of the time you're the person that the client sees. You're the business owner. Then suddenly you go, "It's not me you need to speak to, you need to speak to him."
Got it. What is a handful of tips that you can give somebody to overcome where they might get stuck?
I think the first one is actually in the business owner. You have to be psychologically ready to let go and, you know, allow people to do their own thing. And you would hope that by this point, a business owner has learned, you know, delegation skills and letting go and all that sort of thing. You're just doing it at a bigger level. I think preparation and support are obviously hugely important. So preparing the ground and, you know, telling the team, you know, there is a new guy coming in on Monday. You are reporting to him.
Let me just jump in on this one, because I think I don't want to I don't want to do the repeat of what you already said, because you already said that these are the things. In terms of your blog post, so hopefully you see this as a little different. So what you said is, in terms of like a structure for a blog that would be stronger, we need to work on the positioning from the SEO standpoint and all of that kind of stuff. Your headline, we definitely need to sex up this headline. It's not sexy. But the interest story is, you know, one of the big things when I started my business is I hit a wall, and other people kept saying, "It was time for you. You're too in the business." You know, that I wasn't, I was too in the business, and I was trying to grow the business, and it wasn't working anymore. You know, I knew it was time for me to hire my number 2. I resisted, and then I did it, and then my business changed in incredible ways. One of the things that I noticed in my work in supporting startup organizations and turning them into growing, thriving organizations that are poised to become a number 1 is they struggle with the same thing. And if they can't crack the code on it, they will never have a business that's separate from the entrepreneurs. And I understand that that's a big thing. So then you transition, you know. So in this article, what I want to do is give you 5 tips on how you can actually hire the number 2 without losing, you know, that sense of ownership that you love around your business. You know, number 1, you need to clarify the roles and responsibility in contrast with yours. And then you might give some tips, you know, and one tip, you know, so one of the tips you might say is like, you know, imagine your ideal world when you are doing everything in your zone of genius and you're getting rid of everything else. That's your biggest tip, you know, is you could think about that, and maybe don't use a story of you at this point in time. Use a different story because you already used you. So use a different one. The second thing you need to do is a recruitment process. Here's 5 things that you can do with a recruitment process that would work. 3, one of my favorite things about my process is to do the pre-interview. One of my favorite parts of my process is taking people for coffee, because they're much more casual, and it was really important for me. And it's very important for you as a business owner that you have chemistry, you know, that you're in each other's flow. This is your number 2. They have to replicate you. They have to have different skill sets, but they have to represent you and your brand. So you have to feel comfortable. This is the best one. Number 4, once you make once they get past that, you do the formal interview and the offer. here's what you need to do. And then number 5 is the onboarding and integration. This is a really important part because everybody needs to get on board. Then you do another section where you might get stuck. There's 3 things that my clients typically run into that makes this process hard. Number 1 is they didn't take enough time to get the team to buy in. So you might share, like, I was working with Joe Schmo the other day, and he was trying to, he was going through this process, but this is one of the big things that he overlooked because he had a long-term team and everybody felt threatened and they all thought they should be number 2, and it didn't work. What I did with them is help them, get those people on board. Number 3, I might flip the order, around this one is I might do the most important one at the end so you can get to the next steps. Under communicating the change to the clients, the clients weren't prepared. And the third is it was really hard to let go. One of the things that I found it hard, all my clients find it hard because this is your brand, this is your baby, and it's hard to give your baby to somebody else. And it's hard to just trust somebody else with all of that. So what I would recommend is, number 1 is you really need to get ready for this, but just understand that you're getting ready, not just to lose anything, but to gain. Sometimes you have to let go in order to move forward. And now this is where you could really use some outside help. Somebody who's been where you want to go, could show you the way, and also can provide you the personal support to help you let go, to help you create that vision that you have for the future, because it's hard for you to see the forest from the trees and see objectively what is your zone of genius and what is where somebody else could be. To help you out with that, I got a couple things. Check out whatever XYZ training, video, whatever you have, or let's work together. This is what I do. I love this. Let's jump on a call. And here's your article, which is stronger than what's the difference between a mentor or a coach, because this is more actionable, but you're still positioning yourself as a mentor coach, but later.
You should get into training coaches, Betsy. I think you'd be really good at it.
Okay. Good thing. Yay, I got the right job.
That's brilliant. No, I absolutely brilliant. I can see that completely, and I can see where the benefit is as well.
So, and this is the same kind of order you would do when we get to your website. So there's lots of opportunities here. Well, because right now you're trying to sell this one, but you're not being clear. It's easier to say, I turn a startup idea into a company set for scale. That's my transition. It's not, what do you need right now? You don't need all of these things. They're not sitting there saying, oh my gosh, I really need an honest view, clarification, guidance. What I need is, I'm trying to grow a business. And if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm trying to grow a business, is I'm doing everything. Like you could say it worked for a while for you to be this one thought, like you doing everything and you having all these different people. It's not going to work if you want to set up your business to scale. And then this is what I do. My business is all about equipping and empowering people like you to get to the next level where you still get to say in your zone of genius. And then when you get to your services, you could talk about a lot of different services, but these services are positioned towards bridging that particular gap. So, but going back to the blog post idea, you have more blogs like this. This is where people are going to start knowing what you're all about. So when you do this one, you know this, other people don't to the same level. So I'm kind of preaching to what you already know, but I'm just going to kind of say it for those who are not aware. You could start off with a blog post and hope for the best, or you can do a little bit of work on the front end. It takes a little bit more strategy, where I would say the first thing you want to do is clarify your blog idea, get topics. I would brainstorm a bunch of them. We have 10 or 9. Then reframe it in the form of a question, because people go to Google with questions. Then you look for the keywords. So you can go to Google, or you can go to Answer the Public, or you can go on Uber Suggest. That's what Jen and I use. And clarify, which are the search terms and the competition. What I would say is different from where you're at is consultants and coaches are up at night worrying about the difference between mentor and coach. Our clients don't care. They literally don't care. And they hate our little boxes. They don't want the little boxes like, oh, no, I can't help you with this problem because, I'm a coach. I'm just going to ask you questions. And they're like, fuck it, just tell me the answer. Oh, sorry, I just swore on the video. But I'm going to keep it because that was organic. So fine. People can make fun of that one.
That's not a Disney word, is it, Betsy?
It sure is. It sure is. We just don't do it publicly.
Right, okay.
Then you choose the keyword to optimize, and then you do all this back end stuff, which is, it could be overwhelming, but you already know how to do this, where you come up with your headline idea and all of the back end stuff, and then write your blog. My big thing around the blog is making sure that you're just answering the questions. People have questions, give them the answer. Don't push your methodology. When you get to the methodology around, are you a business mentor, are you a business coach, or whatever you're going to offer, your discovery meeting and your proposal writing process, when you come up with your offers in that particular phase of the work, that's when you're going to get the answer, but not from a blog post standpoint, not in your marketing. People don't need to know all the details because you could change it up. When I did consulting, so far even now with Jen and I and what we do with our clients, no two clients have the exact same offer. You know, we put the different types of things that we do on the website so people understand how we can add value. But with every person, they all have a different starting point. So if you were working in a advertising company that was similar to the company that you had, you're going to do it something very different than a company that needs to position maybe their business and their organization. Like with this particular story, you might deal with it totally different. But now you already have an outline, this is a really good blog post. Any comments, questions, clarification?
Brilliant. I can see how that works because it positions you as an expert. It positions you as somebody who can give guidance from that position of knowledge and expertise, and it's a real problem that people are looking to solve. So that's great.
So the thing I would probably say about your background, so let's just kind of recap some of this stuff. We talked about your ideal client. If you do have expertise in taking a startup company and getting it to a point where you could sell it, that you somehow crack the code on how do I take my idea and make a company that's separate, that's sellable, that's a really powerful value proposition. And if there's other people who are going to fall into your net, but if you just focus on, I help startup ideas turn into these companies that have the potential to be sold. I mean, that's the dream for so many people. And if you have that ability, then just position yourself that way and have your world rise and set on that one. So it's not just growth, it's a startup that has the potential to grow and be sold. That there's equity in the company that is separate from the owner. And a lot of your tips are going to be, how do you get yourself out of it so you actually have a company that is of an asset that can be sold? So, so own that one.
I was going to say, one of the things I learned without knowing I'd learned it was this issue of making yourself redundant, getting yourself out of the business. And this business broker I was speaking to recently, he calls it the 2-week holiday test. Can you go on holiday for 2 weeks and the business still carry on running? If it is, you've got a business to sell. If it doesn't, it's not sellable yet.
That's your
psychologically, a lot of business owners don't realize they haven't got a business, they've got a job. However many members of the team they've got, if they stop and the business falls over, that's not a business, it's a job.
Or it's a business that's not of a separate equity. It's not a separate equity. There's not an equity business. It's just, it's a business. Because I have a lot of people who are my clients, like if you have a predictable pipeline, you have a business. If you have a website, you have a predictable pipeline, you have a business, but it's not an equity business. It's not a business with equity that's separate from you. A job would be the subcontractor kind of model, where I'm just going from gig to gig, hope the best, that customers coming. If you can get a steady stream of customers through what you're doing, but if you're in that place, so here's what I would say is, from a branding and positioning standpoint, I would just play around with that one. I mean, if we were working on your branding, we'd probably go a lot more into the details around your story. I'm just guessing from what we just talked about. So I could be totally off. But let's say that this is what it is. When you write your blog, I would suggest there's an epic blog post, like your seminal ones. There's a difference between your ongoing blogs and then your epic ones. Your epic one might be like 5 steps. How do you go from, how do you go to an equity business that has the potential? So how do you go from startup to an equity business? What are the 5 phases? And so write your epic blog post around that one. And then if your world rises and sets, don't talk about generic growth. Talk about, I'm going from startup to be an equity play. That's what people are saying. It's like, that's an equity play. That's different. Having equity in a company that you could sell. My business, this is my first time since I started partnering with Jen, where things are happening without me. So this is Jen's part of it. This is what you're saying I should be doing, which is what I'm doing. Is Jen's creating our team and she's leading this team. And that's a different kind of experience for me, so I'm learning how to get to that point where I have that partner. That's pretty cool. That's a whole different thing. So then you just keep focusing on that. Is you're going to create a business that has equity potential, and other people will fall into your net. But if you have that, there's a lot of companies that would say, yeah, I want to have an equity play like you, where I can have an exit strategy. This is my retirement, so maybe do an epic blog post. But when you write these blogs, think about the world from their starting point, and where they're at the beginning of the process, not the end, or not the methodology. Your clients aren't going to make the leap. This is, if I were going to emphasize to everybody who hopefully is watching this video, your clients are not going to make the leap between their problem and perfectly labeling the solution or methodology that you want to sell them. When they get on your website, they're never going to make that leap. They're never going to go through that mental process to say, wow, I'm really struggling. I really want to, I want to grow the business. I'm completely overwhelmed and I'm too much in the weeds and I'm not quite sure what to do about it. I don't know how to hire my number two. I know I need to, but I don't know how. They're not going to make the mental leap to say, okay, I have this problem. Now it's a business mentor. Yes, that's the magic word, business mentor. I'm going to go type in business mentor. Oh, but I'm not sure. Is it a business mentor or coach? Oh, I better figure that one out. And then out of all of those searches, like, oh, business mentor or coach, this is the solution to my problem on how I hire my number two. Like, they're not making that leap. So you have to just kind of join the conversation that's in their head, because they're not sitting up at night saying, 3 a.m. To me, I use a 3 a.m. test. They're not, what are they going to go pull out their phone and type in and say, gee, I can't sleep. What's the difference between a business mentor or coach?
It's probably only business coaches and business mentors who are doing that.
Yes.
Like you said.
Yeah, they're worried about it. And the client's like, I don't care. Do you know how many times I put my master's degree on my website when I was a consultant, or even as a coach? Do you know how many times I've had this as a lead? I have a master's in organization development. None. Yeah. I did this interview with some of my former clients, and I asked them, like, hey, why did you hire? I was trying to find out why executives hire consultants. And they told me, this guy told me for a long time, 90% of the reasons why consultants are brought in is for political reasons, not economic reasons. And this was somebody who referred me all the time, like, Brad, isn't it my OD background, my master's? You're like, no, never. I'm like, really? He's like, no, never.
There you go.
So probably not the answer you were looking for, but hopefully this added value.
Well, I've only spent 3 weeks writing that, so I'll screw it all up now and start again.
Okay. All right. Awesome. You're welcome. I'm here to make your time. I'm here to make you waste time. Actually, you're going to maximize time because now you have a process and you have a video you can go back to. So.
But the thing is, if I hadn't wasted 3 weeks, we wouldn't have got to the blog I'm going to write now.
That's true. So everything leads to something positive. So you have to go through the ugly city to get to the pretty city.
Right. Awesome. I'll do that. So I've been through the ugly city, and now I'll write the blog, which is the destination.
It's the pretty city. So, well, this is really fun to talk to you. And if you have questions, let me know. And for anybody who's watching, let me know what you think of this whole blog writing process, and if you have any questions, and if you want to be featured on one of these Ask Betsy series, please email me at betsy@betsydjordyn.com. So otherwise, I will see you all later. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy Jordyn.